stand for. Amen? Amen. Let's talk about school. School starting when? A week from Monday? Is that right? This week, 14th? Right around the corner, starting anyway. And so I won't do, since next Sunday I won't get a chance to do that. But let's talk about school coming up. And at the end of this communion service, I'd like for us to have special prayer for our children going to school. Now, let's talk about school. Civilization and education is taking our children away from God. Did you hear what I said? That's what our prophet taught, because that's what the Bible teaches. Go to Genesis, the 4th chapter, and you'll find where it was serpent seed where the first civilization came from. See, it wasn't designed to be the way that it is today. God meant for us to have a glorious kingdom, which we will have in the millennium. Christ will rule over the earth, but not the way civilization is today. Governments are today that are controlled by Satan. Education, we can trace it back to Genesis 4, to serpent seed. Right. Now, does that mean that God is against us educating our children? No, but not to know Him. And that's what Satan tries to do, is educate our kids to God. And in doing that, he educates them away from God. Brother Branham wasn't against sending kids to school. He sent his kids to school. He sent Billy Paul to the seminary, to a Bible college. And he talked about the young man that was an artist. And he said he wished he had the money to send him to school to be able to further his ability. And it wasn't that, it was what he was against, is the education of the world systems that takes our children away. Let's talk about that. Let's compare homeschooling with public school, because we have pros and cons about both. Homeschooling, we have some here that homeschool, and as far as I know, those that are homeschooling are very qualified to do that. Homeschooling can be a very positive thing if you are qualified to do that, and if you as a parent are disciplined in such a way that you can truly homeschool your kids and give them an education, then that's a wonderful thing. I say this, not a reflection on any of you all here. I say this as a whole, through many years of experience. Most homeschoolers I've found out through my lifetime, within the framework of the message, are no schoolers. They grow up ignorant. Right. And then they grow up being mad at their parents for not allowing them to get a proper education. Now, we got some families that homeschool, and I have the utmost confidence in them that they're very qualified, and I wouldn't have a problem with them teaching my kids if I had little children, because I know they're very disciplined people in that. But I just want to say this to our parents and the young ones, and as time goes on, decisions that you'll have to make in regards to that. Homeschooling, if you're not qualified and you're not disciplined yourself to stay at home and teach them, then it becomes no school. It becomes something where there's no boundaries, and it creates a situation among young people that are in that, even that are raised in the message, to where they develop no respect for authority, even authority behind the pulpit. Right. They become very hard to get along with when it comes to others. And it's just the way that it is. Right. And I say that from experience. Right. Because the kids are allowed to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to. If they decide they don't want to school, they just do, and so I've seen it become almost a religious thing within the framework of the message that if you don't homeschool, that you're a pagan. And I see these kids grow up ignorant, and young men not able to hold down a job to take care of their families. Public schools. Let's talk about that. Public schools are a problem. I sent my kids to public schools, but that's been a long time ago. Things have changed a lot. Things that our government is forcing down the throats of our children is terrible. I don't need to begin to tell you about it, because you know about many of these things. We don't have that here, fortunately, at least in Piggott and some of the surrounding areas where most of you send your kids to school. Sooner or later it will come. I pray that it'll come later. And so it's from what I can see and from what I know, our public schools here are very respectable. I talked to my daughter-in-law that teaches school in Charlotte, North Carolina, a huge school district, and it's just terrible the things that is forced down her throat. They try to force down them kids' throat to teach the kids, even kindergarten kids, that you can be whatever you want to be. If you're on the outside a girl and want to be a boy, on the inside you can be that, or vice versa. You can be whatever you want to be. No discipline, no nothing. Listen, there was been 3 revolutions in this country. There's been the American Revolution to begin with that gave us our freedom. There was an industrial revolution that brought prosperity to our country, but the worst revolution that ever hit this country was the sexual revolution. And we see where it's led to where a person today don't even know which side of this tree they belong to. And you're the dirty one for not accepting it. You have the dirty mind for not accepting those things. Now, I think that when it comes to public schools and private schools, around here, I don't have any problem with either one, really. I think each parent has to decide what is best for their children, not what somebody else is doing, but what's best for your children. You have to sit down, prayerfully decide what is best for my children. And so many times parents decide this way, what is best for me? Because they want to run around, do this and go here, and it becomes a babysitting thing or whatever it is, But what's best for your children, that's what you want to look at always. Remember, public schools are designed by Satan. Right. Yeah, we got some teachers here that are godly teachers and that are involved with the school system. And there are other teachers that I've met in this area that are, maybe they don't believe the message as we believe it, but they're Christians. And they walk in the light that they understand and know and try to hold a certain standard before the children, and I appreciate that. One thing that I dislike worse in public schools is Christian schools. When I say Christian school, denominational Christian schools. And again, it's because I've been around them. I've been in them and saw them, because it creates a greater deception to our kids. And I know kids that have been sent to these denominational Christian schools, and they see the coaches out there cursing and the teachers saying immoral and doing immoral things, and they think, well, this is a Christian school, and it sends a terrible message, because you can expect that in the public schools, but not in a Christian school. And they find the same thing in a Christian school they find in a public school, so it confuses them. Each parent must decide. See, public schools are designed by Satan because the Bible teaches us that, because education is of the devil. And the purpose of it is to educate our children away from God. But I will say this, whether you send your kids to public schools or you teach them at home, homeschooling them, you're going to teach them regardless. You're the one that will be responsible, because yes, they can go behind the 4 walls of the school and be taught by the principal and learn certain things and have certain things at their disposal that will help them and teach them boundaries and certain rules and regulations. But when it comes down to it, you are the teacher. Are you with me? Right. Get involved with your school. Know your principal. Know the teachers, and be on a first-name basis. Volunteer and let them know that you're a Christian. If you send them there, God will bless you for that and bless the school for that. And so, you see, I don't want to have a church of legalism when it comes to our young people, because I've seen too much legalism. I've been around too much of it, even in the framework of the message, and yet today there's so little even legalism, and so you just wonder where to go. Legalism is a terrible thing, but free grace is terrible too when you have no standard. Now, there is a law. There is a law. We have a mayor in Piggott. We have a police chief and policemen. We have stop signs and 1 stoplight, and it's all for our benefit, for that we have that. And so sometimes we present something as being legal, but it's not legalism. And people will brand you with that. Well, he's a legalist. And I've been called that, not by you. Nobody here has ever called me, but I've been called that. But you see, it is not legalism. It is a standard, a high standard that must be kept. That's not kept anymore. There must be a high standard in the framework of this message with your young people. Mom and Dad, it's up to you, not the preacher, not the deacons. It's up to you to keep that standard high. It must be. See, Brother Branham, he wrestled with that and he fought with that. And we could take so many quotes, and I don't have time for the communion service, but he talked about a Brother Spurgeon that he knew. He was an old Methodist preacher. They were holiness. And he used to sing a song, we let down the bars. We let down the bars. We compromised with sin. We let down the bars. The sheep got out. How did the goats get in? He said, because you let down the bars. You let down the standard of Christian living, because the seminaries hatch out, and a seminary can not necessarily be a school you go to. It could be a church you go to. Because the seminaries hatch out a few preachers and send them down to compromise with truth, but the Holy Ghost has always been there to condemn sin, and is tonight standing between the believer and the things of the world. You get that? The Holy Ghost in the church is to stand between the believer and the world. Right. John said, love not the world, neither the things of the world, or the love of God is not in you. That used to be my favorite scripture as a young boy in the Assembly of God church, because I saw worldliness coming into the church. Brother Branham in 1964 preached on spiritual amnesia and how it set in upon the church. He said, but the church today has got a bad case of spiritual amnesia. In other words, she doesn't know who she really is. It doesn't know where it belongs. It's forgot all about it, forgot all these things that makes it a church. What made us so rich as we are? And we are rich. Go to West Africa sometimes. It's got into the place of Laodicea again, back into that rich place like Israel was, when it was poor and it had to trust God for everything it could, everything it got, it trusted God, then God was with it, and it was spiritual and moved on. But when it got rich, here's what happened. Their cities built up. Their women got immoral. Their men permitted it. Their preachers let down the bars. Then they denounced the prophets, and that's the kind of a condition we got into. What caused that was forgetting where them blessings come from. You see a little family struggling, and they're just a rat. That's all they are. You can't get along with themselves. They're just a terrible condition. You see God come into their life and change them. They begin to be blessed by God, and if they're not careful, those blessings take them away. Right. Why? They forget where their blessings come from. You children, some of you old enough to have known a change in your parents. Where did it come from? Remember that. Don't go the way maybe that they once lived. Maybe they were saved off of a bar stool. You don't have to go that way. It's a greater testimony to say, I didn't go that way, than to stand up and say, I was a drunkard and I was an alcoholic, a womanizer and all this, and God saved me. The greatest testimony is, God kept me from all those things. And I can say that. It wasn't that I didn't have the opportunity to drink, to smoke, to womanize, to do all those things, and it's all in my blood. I can tell you about my family tree. It's nothing to brag about, but God kept me. It wasn't Bill Ivy. I couldn't keep nothing. And he can keep all of you, young ones. He can. It shows you're a true blue believer. So I want to talk to you children some more. You parents, maybe I should say it like this. You must talk to your children. Tell them what comes first. Let them know at the beginning of this school year that band don't come first, football don't come first, recreation don't come first. Right. Remember, the school systems are designed by Satan, and we see it becoming more prevalent all the time, where now all the graduations are on Sunday. And it makes it hard, because you put your kids through school and you want to be there with them when they graduate. And I don't blame you. I would too. You see, but what? You see the design of it all? And they make proms into something that is innocent, and it's not innocent. It's of Satan. So let them know. Let them know that school don't come first. Huh?
Right.
It's what we did our kids. You want to belong to football, you want to belong to band, you want to belong to this club or that club, that's okay. But God comes first. You think that's legalism? Is that legalism? No, that's keeping a standard up there to keep the sheep in and the goats out. But everybody else don't do it. Well, if everybody else goes to hell, am I going to say, now y'all go right along with everybody else? See, you tell them what comes first, that school does not come first.
Right.
Not that kind of education. And yet, teach them to be the very best that they can.
Right.
If they can be the I don't know what they call it, but the top person in the school, education-wise, to give the speech. Valedictorian. Yeah. I could say something about that, and I don't know if I should. Maybe I ought to stop the tape or something. But and it's good, but I remember a pastor bringing his boy to me. He'd been homeschooled and didn't want to go to public school, and brought his son to me, and the kids didn't want to go to school because they run into a little difficulty because of other kids and things. And I set him down and talked to him and a little bit encouraging. You go back and be the very best that you can. In fact, his sister graduated top honors as a valedictorian and so forth. And I think you should try to be the best. But I don't think that they should try to be in the in crowd. I love the way my mother and daddy approached it for me whenever I was growing up. They wanted us to have a good education. They checked our report cards and made sure that we brought them in. But I don't ever remember them ever punishing me for a bad grade. I can remember them, they would look at it, they'd ask me, they knew me better than anybody. Did you do your best, Billy Wayne? Yeah, I did my best. They knew if I was telling the truth or not. Well, you're going to have to try a little harder this time. And they just wanted me to do my best. They didn't want me to be a straight A student if I couldn't be one, and I wasn't one. I don't want to tell you what I was. If I could just go back and know what I know now. I'd get a good education. But anyway, they just, as long as I did my best. I think we push our kids so hard till they buck the traces. Let them, yeah, if they want to be the best, let them, but don't let them be the in, you know, the in guy, the in girl. Keep them at home. As long as you can, keep them at home. Try your best as parents. Once they get out there away from the token and move in with other people, around other things, they're going to be influenced by that. And I don't know why it is, but you take two people. You take a Christian and an unbeliever, and you let them begin to hang around. Where is the strongest influence? Where is the now you older people, where does the strongest influence come? Who does it affect the most? The Christian. I don't know why it is. Eventually, but you never see that Christian of influence in that rotten apple. Well, you put one rotten apple into a basket of a bunch of good apples, and after a while, every one of them apples will be rotten. It's the influence. That's why God has to take that rotten apple out. Right. You understand, young people? Keep them at home. Some of you parents have done a good job of that. And you can see the results. Let them bring their friends home. You know, it's a fallacy to me that so many times, especially it is, and I don't say this about you that are doing homeschooling, because I believe those that we have are doing a wonderful job. And in that respect, but I know of churches that, most churches in the message, everybody homeschools. It's almost a religious thing. That if you send them to public schools, you're not really in. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And, but anyway, you see that after a while, and we know Brother Branham said to teach our children to hang around other Christian kids, but there are Christian kids in the school. They may not believe the way we believe, but they may be a solid Baptist, a solid Pentecostal boy or girl. Find those kids that are respectable and honorable and be friends to them. Invite them home with you. And we were always very careful where we let our kids go and spend the night. If we didn't know the mama and daddy and who they were and what it was about them, we got to know them. We'd invite them over and maybe have a little barbecue and get to know them. If the kids, and so, yeah. They should be, rather than letting a rotten apple make them rotten, they should be able to influence others. And our kids used to bring them to church. We had a little bitty church in Denham Springs. But they'd bring all their buddies, all their little friends. And to this day, our kids are old. I mean, they're getting beyond middle age. And I'm ancient. And to this day, we hear from some of those kids. And they'll send us, my wife, messages and say, those were the best days of our life, coming over to your house and playing games on Saturday night, going to church with you and things. They can have an influence. See, don't let your children be the boss and tell you what they're going to do and what they're not going to do and how they're going to dress and how they're not going to dress. If your young ladies are becoming teenagers and they dress wrong, it's because mama dressed them up that way. And I could bring you a lot of quotes. Let me see, you parents, you teach your little, especially the girls, why they don't dress a certain way. Especially in the day that we live in. And you mamas, remember how some mamas, they'll have their daughter will get wedding and get married in a wedding, and it'll be like them getting married, and they want it to be every way they wanted it to be. And I think sometimes mothers want to dress their little girls up in a way that they really want to be, because you're a little old 13, 14-year-old girl's going to wear what mama puts on her. And see, the prophet taught us things that see through, blouses that show. And now they design dresses that look like the blouses around the bottom. Right. And believers wear them. You see? All these things are designed by Satan. You understand? Right. Nets and stuff that show the skin and the undergarments. And if somebody can, if your daughter can turn around and you can see her underwear on her back, she's not properly dressed. Right. This is what our prophet taught. Right. And yet I think, I see it. Mama had to dress her that way. And Brother Branham, and I have to get vulgar now, but Brother Branham did, and he said these girls, they'll wear their breast, their clothes, and their breasts so tight that their breasts stick out. He said, that's not normal. Mama dresses them that way. Why? Because she wants to make them a harlot. You see, and I said that, and it's hard. But let me explain. You explain why. You see, in the Old Testament, you'd be put to death for that. Jesus didn't do away with the law. He magnified it and made it worse. If you were caught in the act and done something immoral with a boy or a girl, you were put to death, both of you. Jesus magnified it and said, if you look at a woman to lust after her in her heart, you've already committed adultery with her. Right. Brother Branham explained it. And he said, you girls can be ever so virtuous. Boy never touched you. And yet if you present yourself in such a way that a boy can that will draw attention to your body. Deliberately draw attention to your body. You've caused him to commit adultery with you, and you're guilty as if you'd done the very act. Right. And we dress our daughters up that way. I say that with love. We wonder why they become rebellious is because of the way they're raised. To be allowed to do whatever they want to do, to dress like the world. And our boys, remember the world today is to let a boy look like a girl and a girl like a boy. So teach them why they don't go to proms. If your young son or daughter goes to the prom, they don't have no business taking communion. You as a mother or dad should stop them. I can't stop them, but you should talk to them and say, you know you're not a Christian. You know you need to make that right. You know you're bringing a disgrace upon the Lord's table.
Right.
Or if you encourage them to go to proms. There's nothing wrong with it. Yes, there is. There's everything in the world wrong with it. Tell me one thing that's right about it. Or date people that are not saved. When you boys or your sons get old enough to date it, they're dating an unsaved boy. They don't have no right to take the Lord's communion. And yet, I know this. Our young ladies want to get married, and maybe the boy you're going to marry lives next door. Maybe he works at Walmart. Maybe you don't go to church right now. But if you live the right kind of life around him and not run after him and let him see a Christ-like character, if there's something in him that is a real character that loves God, he'll be attracted to you, and you can lead him to Christ in that way before you ever go on your first date with him. So you date people that are saved. And so the fashions of the world is not of God for males or female. Even the suits today for men are being designed by sissies to make a man look like a sissy. So we want to teach our children, teach them to respect authority. It's very serious, Mama and Daddy. You teach your children to respect authority, whoever that authority is. And I could say some things about that. I just don't want to hurt any feelings, and maybe it's because, like Brother Neville, I just won't do that. But I would if I really felt to. Teach them why they have long hair. Teach them about leadership. That if they can't submit themselves to the preacher behind the pulpit, when he tells them something, they'll never submit themselves to a husband. They'll never submit themselves to God. Teach them what they are. You're a girl. You're a boy. You act like one. And we have our own church youth meetings coming up, and it's the most discouraging thing for me as a pastor till I almost wanted to call them off, where young people will go other places than the youth services, while others come from distances, take off of school and work and everything. Let me end by saying this. What is a pretty girl? A pretty girl is a girl that is innocent in her makeup, yet very knowing. She's knowledgeable about what she should stay away from. Wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. A real pretty girl is a girl that is weak. She's designed that way to be weak. Not the strong one, the aggressive one to chase boys. Yet she's to be strong in that she will say, you know who she is. She won't put herself in a compromising position where she'll be taken advantage of by a boy. As Brother Branham said, there wouldn't be a bad girl if there wasn't a bad boy to make her that way. A real pretty girl is simple, very simple, not simple-minded, because she's also very intelligent. Simple in that she doesn't want to be some executive of a business or an announcer on TV or some great something like that. Their whole desire in makeup is to be a housewife and to be a mother someday. Right. What is a good-looking boy? He's a boy that is mature, not one that walks around with a cell phone playing games all the time. I'll show you a baby that somebody needs to change his diaper every day. Put one on him so everybody will know what he is. I don't care if they're in college or if they're married, and all they have time to do is play games. Every time you see them, they're playing a game on their cell phone. There's somebody who needs to have a diaper put on them. A real boy is mature yet humble, very humble about their maturity. A real boy is strong. They're made that way, but yet kind and gentle, especially when it comes to the sisters in this church. They treat them as if they were their own sister. And I know some of you are pretty rough on your sisters. William laughing there, but one day. They're aggressive, but yet in that aggressiveness, very protective. Amen? School's fixing to start. Talk to your kids. Pray with them and ask God to help them and lead them. You that take brothers, we're going to serve communion. You can come now.